All right, welcome back, everyone. Our next speaker is going to be Joe, and he's going to talk about building great things with teams. And he'll be sticking around for Q&A, but he'll also be in this session. So go to that hashtag to ask questions during his
When we
presentation.
think of the Macintosh, it's almost impossible not to think of Steve Jobs. But Jobs never wrote a line of code on the Mac project. He didn't solder together the motherboards on the prototypes. He didn't draw the icons nor write the human interface guidelines either. This is the team that built the Mac. These folks, along with others, worked tirelessly together to bring this amazing product to life. Almost none of the great products brought into the world were the result of one person's efforts. Teams ultimately make great things. Hello, I'm Joe Cieplinski, a software developer and designer doing contract freelance work in Boulder, Colorado. I've been making software for Apple devices since 2010, and I've been using software on Apple devices much longer than that. I've been on a lot of teams in my time, and some of them did great things, and some of them not so much. In our industry, we have this weird tendency to want to associate a single figure with the world's great products. Chris Latner with Swift, Bill Gates with Windows, Jeff Hawkins with the Palm Pilot. We're attracted to this persona of the lone genius cranking away in the garage on the next big thing, all alone, or maybe with one or two other people. But almost nothing good ever comes to the world that way. The longer I work in this industry, the more products I work on, the more I realize that trying to put a dent in the universe all by myself is really not the end goal for me anymore. Ultimately, I'm happiest in my work when I'm working with great people. The things we're working on almost don't even matter to me anymore. Of course, the product can't be something harmful to people. It has to be something I believe in and respect. But I've learned it's okay if not everything I do is trying to make history. As long as I can be proud of my work and share in the joy of shipping something with people I respect, I consider it a win. And here's the thing, when I get myself on a good team, that's most often when the things I make have the greatest impact anyway. Associate yourself with good people, in other words, and the rest will come. When we're looking for something new, then, whether that be a temporary contract job or a new full-time position, maybe it's a good idea not to be as concerned with the end product so much as the group of people that we're joining. Yet, how many of us actually do that? How many times have you learned too late that the primary person doing your code reviews is a massive egomaniac who insists on rewriting everything you add to the project? How often have you learned too late that the team you have to work with every day doesn't really respect design at all? How many times have we finally achieved that dream job working for the company we've admired for years, only to find out that internally their company's culture is completely toxic? Today, I want to talk about how we can learn to focus our efforts on finding good teams so that we can be happy in our work and reach our full potential. Contrary to popular belief in the tech industry, working with assholes isn't necessary. It's not even optimal for achieving greatness. So, how do we get ourselves on a great team? Step one, of course, is being a good team member yourself. Steve Jobs once famously said that A players don't want to work with C players. And he was right. Talented people, by and large, need to respect their fellow coworkers. Once you let mediocrity onto your team, you start losing your best people.
I've built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people and not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. And I found something. I found that when you get enough A players together, when you go through the incredible work to find 5 of these A players, they really like working with each other because they've never had a chance to do that before. And they don't want to work with B and C players. And so it becomes self-policing. And they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates. And that's what the Mac team was like.
A players have options, in other words. They will eventually take them. But it's about a lot more than talent. Here's a newsflash for you. There's no shortage of hotshot developers and designers out there. And no matter how good you are at what you do, there's always someone better. Many years ago, I got a call from a drummer I played with in high school. He told me he heard about this jazz quartet that needed a bass player to fill in for the gig at a tiny little bar in New Jersey across the river from where I lived. I called up the band leader, the piano player, and we had a great, quick conversation with her. And after a good chat, I got the gig. The band was incredible. Best drummer I ever played with, bar none. And he was, let's just say, super supportive of me. For the most part, I spent the entire gig just trying to keep up with him. He offered great advice, and he told me to keep hanging in there. Frankly, I embarrassed myself playing with this group. They were that much better than me. But I soldiered through that first gig and a few others after that, and eventually I fell into some kind of groove. And I noticed a pattern. I was showing up about an hour before showtime. I'd set up my gear and wait patiently for my cohorts to arrive. But the rest of the band would show up about 30 minutes after the gig was supposed to start. They'd rush to set up, and then we'd get going in a tizzy. Typical musicians, right? And the other members would keep switching every week. Different trumpet player one week from the next, a sax player the next week. Sometimes one of the members just wouldn't show up and we'd have to play without them. Then after a couple of weeks, I stopped getting the call. I figured either the owner had gotten fed up with us and not starting on time and fired us, or the band leader had found someone better. No big deal, happens all the time. A month or so goes by, and I get a call again. It's the piano player. She says to me, I found this incredible bass player who's frankly way better than you, but he was late the first week, and then he didn't even show up last week, and at least you always show up. Now, aside from the fact that I loved her brutal honesty, I was really happy at an opportunity to get to play with these folks again, so I took the gig. I show up an hour early as usual, and the owner gives me a free drink and chats me up for a while. I could make some money with this live show if everyone had the same kind of dedication as you did. I just laughed politely in agreement and waited for them. The rest of the band showed up late as usual. We played the gig, 2 or 3 more weeks like this, and the owner eventually gives up on us. He couldn't develop a crowd to watch a live show that never started on time, essentially. The point is, I learned pretty quickly that being someone you can count on matters a heck of a lot more than being a hotshot. The best coder, the best designer in the world is pretty useless if they're always flaking out, or if they're not producing or slowing the forward progress of the products. And worst of all, if they're infecting the rest of the team with this resentment and ill will. You have to be good at what you do, of course, but that's table stakes. That's literally the minimum requirement. Once you're reaching a certain level of technical skill, more technical skill is not going to help you much. It's secondary to all the human factors. I'm convinced I get steady work, not because I'm a great developer or a great designer. I'm pretty good. I can hold my own and I get better every year. I get called because I keep showing up an hour early. I put in a few extra hours when I know we want to ship the following week. And I don't charge the client extra for it either. I hop on a quick call with my teammates to help them track down a bug when they have problems, even if I have a lot to do on my own plate. I do all this and I don't expect a cookie for it either. I'm not looking for praise, even though I'll take it if it comes. Essentially, if you want to be a good teammate, you need to be the sort of person you'd want to see on the team yourself. Now, big caveat. You have to be careful not to be a floor mat. I'm not suggesting you have to work long hours every day, have no personal life, or let your boss take advantage of you in order to succeed. Floor mats make for terrible teammates, actually, because eventually they get resentful, bitter, and impossible to be around. You lose all respect for people who don't stand up for themselves. And again, the entire team gets infected with that negative energy. It never ends well. But you do have to be a team player. You have to be invested in what you're building, and you have to compromise once in a while for the greater good. In whatever capacity, you have to do that without compromising your own sanity, your family life, and so on. Okay, so let's talk about some more specific ways to get along better with your teammates. Developers, working with other developers, your biggest opportunity to win over your teammates is going to be code review. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, in terms of personality conflicts, differences of opinion, and so on. Start by asking yourself, why do we do code review? Some of the smartest developers I work with treat code review as the ultimate learning opportunity. I remember one time being told by someone I greatly admired the first time we worked together, I really look forward to reviewing each other's work. I think we're both going to learn a lot. Instantly, my anxieties about not being good enough melted away. They're going to learn from me? Really? Wow. Okay. To me, the purpose of code review is to make the end product better. Every line of code that another developer reviews is going to end up being better code. I appreciate and love suggestions about different ways to approach problems. I love talking about styles, setting standards of consistency, and collaborating on reaching the best possible outcomes. A lot of reviewers seem to think code review is about proving how smart you are. Some see it as a power trip too, right? An opportunity to hold back progress until they get things exactly the way they want them. We all know that guy. Don't be that guy. I see code review as an opportunity to take on a new ally on the team. Every programmer has their particular hangups. Many have super strong opinions about things that frankly don't matter to me at all. So I don't argue with them. I'm happy to let go of the things I don't feel strongly about. That way, when I really do feel it's important to push back, there's zero chance the other person's going to take it personally or think that I'm just trying to be difficult. Wow, if Joe's pushing back on this, maybe it's worth another look. No matter what the company style guide and accepted practices may be, the team on a specific project is ultimately going to have to work out specific standards for the project that go beyond that guide. Why would you want that process to be difficult? My approach, stick to your guns on the things that you care most about. Let the other person have their way on everything else. Is it really going to kill you to add an extra empty line space after guard statements, even if that's something you don't usually do? Is it worth dying on the hill of 4 spaces for an indent versus 2? Save the super opinionated stuff for your personal projects. Someone is paying you to produce a product. You have to go with the accepted norms of the team. Otherwise, you're wasting your client's money and you're making your colleagues miserable. If you notice, every reviewer will have certain pet peeves, tiny little things that mean nothing to the compiler or you, but just drive them up the wall for whatever reason. Let them have it. Once I know what sorts of flags I get from certain reviewers over and over, even if I don't care myself, I try to avoid annoying them. It doesn't cost me much, and people seem to appreciate that you notice these things. Okay, designers, I haven't forgotten about you. Remember design school, where everything you did was brutally skewered by your classmates during critique? You hated every second of it, didn't you? But it was critical to your growth. Don't make the mistake of thinking that that's all over now just because you're out of school. If you can't sell your designs, don't blame the people who aren't buying. Just like with code review, you need to be open to what might be legitimate criticism from your developers, the marketing team, and frankly, everyone else. The best designers I've worked with have all been super open to the possibilities in their designs. They listen, not just to other designers, but to everyone on the team. And when they disagree, they tell you why. They can always defend their choices without getting defensive. Now, design is a continuous process. It's not handed down from on high and then executed. It's a constant back and forth between all the team members until you get to the final product, until you get to what's best for the customer. In a lot of ways, designers are put in a really terrible position. They need to impress the stakeholders with something that pops, but they also have to create something that stays within pretty rigid user interface guidelines, brand standards, social norms. They need to be creative under incredibly tight constraints. I remember early in my design career, I had been hired as a creative director for a mid-sized company that had little or no design team prior to me getting there. And the entire company was dominated with salespeople, essentially. But they were finally reaching that size where their ugly sales presentations were starting to get in the way of impressing the right clients. So we took the task of redesigning the slide deck. And I did all the things a typical designer might do. I walked into the meeting with my big ideas, wanting to throw away the entire deck, enforce incredibly strict typography standards, limit the deck to a handful of templates, and on and on. What we had was a complete mess, I said, but not to worry, I'll make something beautiful. The sales team, of course, was having none of this. I got a ton of resistance, and I left the meeting frustrated. Afterwards, a friend of mine who helped me get the job, in fact, pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, what the heck was that?" And I started venting. I thought I was going to get sympathy from him, but instead, he said something I'm never going to forget. He said, "Well, have you considered it from their point of view?" To a member of the sales team, that slide deck was their old but reliable used car. It might have been ugly as sin, but they knew it inside out, and they depended on it for confidence to get through what, frankly, sounds like the worst possible job in the world to me, standing in front of a group of suits and trying to convince them to give me money. I was trying to take their armor away overnight and replace it with something unfamiliar and unproven. What was that going to do to their confidence? What they needed was for me to walk into that room with questions, not solutions. How can I help you make this deck more effective? What would make it easier to impress potential clients? Sure, better typography was probably going to be a good start, but I hadn't earned their trust yet. And I certainly hadn't done my job as a team player. I wasn't listening. If you want respect as a designer, you have to learn to ask more questions and give fewer lectures. If your company doesn't respect design as much as you like, you're not going to change that by whining about it or reminding everyone that you're the expert. Okay, so now let's assume we're all going to be great team members. Excellent. How do we get on a great team? How do we spot a great team even? Well, it helps if we insist on meeting the team before we take the job. Sounds obvious, right? But it doesn't always happen. It won't even always be possible, but I consider it pretty essential at this point, so I always ask for it nowadays. For full-time jobs, it's a bit more common to be interviewed by a number of different people, many of whom will be your direct team members. In contract situations, especially when subcontracting, you usually get thrown into a stand-up call after everything's already been signed. And that's pretty unfortunate. You may be able to get a job based on your reputation or a history of working well on projects by an agency or whatever, but there's serious personality considerations when putting people together on a project, and you never really know how people are going to get along until they're put in a room together. Learn to spot the smart hiring directors who want you to meet the team beforehand. They're valuable. Doesn't take much. Get 5 minutes to sit down with each of the members of the team and feel out their positions on various topics. Ask questions and listen. It's not a perfect barometer, but you'd be surprised how good you can get at spotting potential conflicts in a 5-minute conversation with someone. People reveal way more than they mean to sometimes. And do look for diversity in your team. No question, the best teams I've worked on were the ones that had more people of color, more gender diversity, more points of view. Not only are you more likely to get more input from a variety of perspectives, you're going to get people who are more flexible, more open to suggestions, and frankly, just all around better people. And it'll be reflected in the end product. I've gotten lucky a few times and made some great stuff in a room full of white guys, sure, but The teams that gave me the most headaches, almost always rooms full of white guys as well. Now, sometimes meeting the team beforehand just doesn't work out. That's okay. Set aside some time to talk to your team members individually as soon as you can. Ask questions and listen. If it's an established team, remember, you're walking into a society that's already established some ground rules. Respect the fact that you weren't around for those decisions and aren't privy to the reasoning behind those choices. You're going to have what you think are better ways to do things. Keep them to yourself at first. There will be time to offer your suggestions eventually. Occasionally, you'll learn too late that you've gotten yourself on a team with some problematic people. Okay, it happens. Try to work it out. If you can't, start looking for your next thing. I can't stress this enough. Working with people you can't stand is never worth it. Long term, you're just going to make yourself and everyone else on the team miserable. And you're never going to make anything great. You may not be able to leave right away because you have to make money. I get that. We all need to make a living. But start planning your exit. When a better opportunity comes along, take it. Remember, A players always have options. Thank you. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Hey there, Joe. Thanks for a great talk.
Thank you.
So I didn't see any further questions, but I did want to ask, for somebody who, A, has never been in a great team, what advice would you give them?
You're saying John and Nicole are in a great team that you work with here? Or you're saying just
I mean, you can always sell out your half of the business. You can always sell off your half of the business to them and not have to work with them anymore. But that's not a solution for everybody.
I am 100% amazing. Just saying.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I mean, honestly, I could say it was several years into my career before I got on my first good team, let alone great team. And it's the most depressing part is when you get on a good team and you think that's going great. And then like as a contractor, you're constantly moving on. Right. So, when the team after that great team is a lousy team, it's like, oh, that's so depressing. Like I thought I had hit the jackpot and I thought I had figured out the magic formula. I don't know a great formula at this point. Like I said, the best advice I can give you is like, just try to keep being the best person you can be. And then the other spot, and this goes back to the keynote we heard yesterday, Londo, it's just like, if you're in a situation that you cannot fix, then you've got to move on. You've got to find a better place for yourself, because I really feel like if you're personally miserable, your contributions to the team are always going to be affected by that. Like there's no way you can be your best when you're not in a great headspace. So yeah, like I said, you're going to move on a lot. You're going to, kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince, so to speak. So, just keep trying until you find that great group of people.
Franklin has a good question. I'm going to add a little bit to his question. He says, how do you know if you're an A player? And then how do you know if you truly are an A player versus thinking you're an A player?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, a lot of people think they're A players. And like I said, my definition of A player isn't just about talent. Like that's like table stakes. Like I said, you start there as a starting point, and that'll come over time. But to me, the A players are the people that are flexible, the people that are understanding, the people that try to help the team rather than hurt the team. They aren't out for themselves. They're out for the better product, right? Or the better user experience for the customer. And so that to me should always be the goal. The technical skill, and this, again, the smartest clients I've ever had were people basically by and large was like, I don't care that you don't know this particular bit. I almost got hired earlier this year to do an Android project. I never built an Android app in my life, but he's like, I'd rather have you learn Android than try to find somebody at this point, because I just like you and I figure code is code. You'll learn it. Right. And so like things of that nature, like be the kind of person who personality wise gels with the team. And that's not always easy because like I said, a lot of team members are not easy to get along with, but I feel like the more you can work on your people skills, and while you're working, I know, and it's a lot to do, but like while you're working on your technical skills, to me, that's way more valuable. Like I said, by and large, the best teams I've been on weren't with the most talented people per se, although I have worked with really talented people who are also excellent team members. So it's not like they're mutually exclusive.
Excellent. Personal question. I've told many a client, you're not the best client I have because you're not the funnest, you're not the most team oriented, and I have no qualms telling them that. Um, but I haven't worked in a team so long, like, been a part of a team for so long. Like, do you think that's a good advice to give a team? Like, I hate to break it to you people, but you guys suck as a team. You should be better, but right now you're not. You really kind of suck, and so you should fix this.
Yeah, there may be better ways to express that. But yes, I do think it is very important. It's vital on good teams. The best teams I've been on, people were able to, in the middle of a stand-up meeting, like, literally today, it was a great example. One of my fellow iOS developers on a team, I was in a stand-up meeting this morning, and he basically said, "Wait a second, this is not working for me. Like, we changed something 2 weeks ago, and this new methodology, honestly, I just feel pressured. I feel like this is not my best me. I can't make this work." And we had like an hour-long discussion about it. But the end product, the end result was great. And the client ended up saying, "Well, thanks for bringing that up. Like, I didn't know this change was bothering you that much. I'm glad I know that now. And let's, again, the best clients will be the ones that'll move with you, right? As long as we're all working towards that same goal, they're not going to say, "Well, no, it's my way or the highway." That's how you end up with terrible products ultimately.
I'm gonna add Ariel. He didn't know I was adding him yet. Only because I think we can segue into both of his talks. Because Ariel, you can see which products do well, and Joe, you have perspective on which teams work well together. And then this sort of ties back to what Rob was saying, which was you started with Steve Jobs, who doesn't seem like the exact poster boy for the rest of the talk.
Yeah, I considered that when I thought about my audience. I'm like, yeah, I do have a point in the talk where I say you don't have to work with assholes, and then I Steve, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, he was nice to me. Is all I'll say. Yeah, the 4 or 5 encounters I had with Steve, he was actually very gracious. But like, yeah, I know his reputation. I know he wasn't always easy to deal with. But yeah, I think that's a great question. Like, I think the point is that a lot of us in this industry in particular, like, we idolize people like Steve Jobs, and we look up to him as like, oh, that's why the Macintosh happened. And it's like, well, him plus that entire team that you saw that list of, all the people who signed the inside case, they were the ones who made the thing happen ultimately. And yeah, under Steve's leadership, despite or like, because of, I don't know, that's the whole question. But like, I firmly believe that you don't have to be that way necessarily to get good results. But yeah, it's a great point to bring up. But yeah, it's hard for me not to use a Steve Jobs reference at some point in my talks.
So now the 4 of us do something that most people say you never do in business. You never go in business with your friends, or you never go in business with your family.
Yeah, we're business together anymore, so.
But you're still business with your wife.
Well, 1, whoever they are, they're wrong, and 2, they just don't have the right friends and family.
That's what I think. That's a good point, though, because and I'm going to call John out here. When I left, John thought it was for malicious reasons.
For no reason.
That's awesome. Well played, John.
So when I left, John thought it was for malicious reasons. And I just really wanted to get back to development. And he thought it was some other reason. And so there was a little bit of tension. And finally, like, one day, I'm like, dude, I just like developing. Like, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the conference. Like, you're set. You're good.
Yeah. I've always said you just need better friends if your friends aren't people you like. I've had some of the best experience I've had working with friends is like when I started the whole iOS thing was with my friends at Bombing Brain. I mean, these are 2 guys I went to high school. Well, one guy I went to high school with, the other one I knew because he was in the band of the guy I went to high school with. And that was just an amazing experience. So like, yeah, I think it's a matter of there are definitely personal relationships you need to maintain within that, and you have to be careful and navigate that properly. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, like working with friends, family. Oh, maybe not my family. I don't know. They're all family.
Again, you have to have that sort of relationship connection.
Right.
But I do think that working with friends and family, you have that established relationship where when you try to make them an A player, even if it's a little harsh at times, they realize that it's coming from a place of love, right? Like when John hated going in front of the crowd, and I used to tell him, no, you're going in front of the crowd. And he'd be like, I hate you.
I sense John leaving again. I don't know
I
why.
still say that, but
This is just Tom talking about John. I love this.
I
We
know.
should do this. This should be a session.
To be fair, I was the one who never did anything. John would come on in the mornings and be like, dude, did you do that thing you were supposed to do yesterday? No. But I had this great idea. He'd be like, yeah, shut up with the ideas. Can you do the thing you're supposed to do?
like he did later.
Yeah, John was always the reason why there was actually shows.
Well,
So
and
there's-
that's another key point, though. Like it's the complementary skill set, right? Like there are certain people, like without that person, this wouldn't have happened. But at the same time, right? Like the Apple One or the Apple II wouldn't have happened without Wozniak, but it also wouldn't have happened without Steve Jobs, right? Again, not to bring us back to that example, but the point is, like, a good team has different skill sets in each person, and each of the team members brings out the best in each of the others, right? So you really want to have the people who inspire you to do your best work. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to hear, but it's like, John, you're the face of this show. You need to be on stage, even if he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like making him realize that,
True.
it's the kind of thing that only a friend can push you to do. If a stranger does that, you're gonna be like, yeah, whatever,
Totally. When you talk about working with other people, you have to work with people that you enjoy working with, whether it's friends, family, some homeless person you found on the street.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really what it is. I've had partners that were friends, quote unquote, and they suck. They were terrible. They were so bad. I never wanted to work with a partner ever again. But I've been working with Oz for 15 years now. I don't even know how long at this point. No, probably more. I mean, I've known Oz for more, so that makes sense.
I've known his whole life.
I've never worked with anybody. Just saying.
Well, actually,
Well,
no, I don't know Oz all my life. He knows me all his life.
Oh, that's right.
I
That's
was,
right.
I was around there were a few quiet years where I was the boss. That's right. A few short years.
Yeah. And John and I did work with each other before we became business partners, so we already knew our working styles. But I just wanted
You knew
to tie
the
it back
shortcomings.
exact of each other. We both knew each other's shortcomings. But Jake had a good question. I think that you can speak to, Ariel, about Oz. He said, "How should developers approach learning design when they're code oriented?" And from you, it's not necessarily code oriented, but business oriented. How do you reconcile those differences between business and design? When you have this great idea and he shows you a design, and you're like, dude, no, that's not what I'm thinking at all.
You know what? I actually experienced this on my own. I learned this through pain. In the beginning, I would say, no, if you like it, go ahead with it. Do it. But I think design is not the kind of thing that you do and you just decide, yes, it's good, I'm just going to do it. You need that sort of iterative, just ideas. It's an idea that grows. And so in the beginning, I was like, just do it. It's fine. It looks good. It works. And I was just like, no, I need someone to bounce ideas off of. He didn't use these particular words, but that was the gist. And over time, I learned that I have to do a lot of listening. And so if in the beginning, it was fonts. And we talked about fonts for days to the point where I now realize how complicated fonts are. I didn't think they were complicated. There are a few things on the screen, one's a little bit rounded.
I like them.
You are just like a developer.
I mean, this is me like 7 years ago, so yeah.
Yeah. It's only a whole industry. Don't worry about it. It's not important.
Yeah. But I mean, 7 years ago.
What I always say to designers is, and when I worked as a designer, my big thing was like, I need to justify my decisions. Like, there have to be business reasons for this. It's not just, hey, it looks pretty. It's like, what problem am I trying to solve? Am I solving a specific problem for the customer with this design? Then I should be able to defend that. And if I can defend that, then all the business guys like Ariel in the world are going to be like, oh, okay, great. But if I just say, hey, this looks pretty, and I'm the expert, and I said it's great, and we're using this font because it's the right font, that doesn't help anybody. Like, you need to be able to say, like, we're using these choices for this reason.
Yeah, definitely true. Ultimately, what I understood is that when you're in a position to make decisions, you kind of have to want to learn about all the different aspects. I'm not the world's greatest designer, but by far, there's I would never make that sort of statement. But I don't think I'm terrible. I can see things now and can connect between this is a good experience, there's good business value, the feature works the way it should be. So I may not know how to implement it, but it feels good to me. And that only happened because I realized that if I am to make those calls or be involved in those calls, I kind of have to do it. So now I know a lot about fonts, and fonts are actually very interesting. I actually, in one of my recent guides, I don't know which one of you are in the newsletter, I actually talk about fonts and how you should use fonts in your screenshots. Yeah, to convert. Hopefully you didn't look at it, you're like, what? This is basic. I try to keep it simple. But yeah, and I think it makes such a big difference. So now I see it as a kind of an advantage. I know all these things. I may not be the world's greatest designer, but I know how to implement them and actually affect some sort of change. So you have to want it.
Yeah, that's what I would say. As a developer who recently just started to understand my designer's design language, a lot of it was, he would say, "I'm sorry to be anal," and I'm like, "No, it's not that you're anal. I just I just don't see what's missing. Like, I know it doesn't match your design exactly, but I don't know why it doesn't match." And then once you start to understand things like, well, it's too crowded. It needs more space. Then you're like, oh, it needs more padding. Blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like helping the mentality is great. All right. So Ariel, you're 2 minutes late. So I blame John.
Yeah.
Please keep asking, so there's nobody to worry about after.
John did all the talking here, so
That's right. Yeah. It's always his fault. But no, you put me and Ariel on a stream together, we're in trouble.
45 minutes later, like, wait, I didn't even start my talk.
Yeah. So which one of you is going to plug the Ariel Joe, virtual talks? Which one of you is going to plug that?
That's true. Well, you go ahead, Ariel. You're usually published by you.
Yeah, that is very true. Joe and I really enjoy talking to each other, usually in real life, now on these sort of screens. And we talked about WWDC, we talked about new things, we talked about what is exciting, unexciting. I think now that we're about a few months after that, the talk still holds true the way I still remember it. Everything we talked about, the more I read about it, the more I kind of get into it. It still makes a lot of sense. We talked about clips and how you can use clips as your landing pages. It was a really good talk. If you are interested, I'm sure I can share a note. I'll put it in the Slack.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right.
Awesome.
Joe, thanks for everything.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thanks, John.
We'll let you and John go. Now it'll be just me and Ariel's hour.
Bye, everybody. I'll go into my Slack channel and answer something.